Hello and welcome to the ServiceNow How-To for Security Operations, Security Incident Response. My name is Shane Rasvi, and I'll be walking through ways to best utilize security incident response. Starting off, I just wanted to touch on the privilege and confidential information notice. This is covered by the non-disclosure agreement between your company and ServiceNow, as well as the safe harbor notice for forward-looking statements, as there are some statements contained in this presentation that are forward-looking, and this is just based on management's beliefs and assumptions and on information that is currently available. So our agenda for today, we're going to start by talking about automating the security incident response process, as well as goals when it comes to security incident response. So what we really want to accomplish and how security incident response works through ServiceNow, as well as some best practices when it comes to security incident response implementation. Then we're going to jump into a security incident response lab where we're going to look at some common practices, some common actions that you might take within the security incident response environment with ServiceNow. And then we are going to just finish off with some next steps. We really want to look at how we are going to go about this and how we're going to optimize these processes. So first of all, we're going to talk about how to get started with your security incident response implementation. Then we're going to talk about key concepts and skills for using security incident response. And then we'll jump into some best practices and additional resources. So when it comes to automating the security incident response process, starting off, just going over some challenges that are very often faced by security teams. These can involve oftentimes two things, and that is the inability to prioritize incidents quickly, as well as manual and delayed responses to processes. So when it comes to lack of prioritization, we see that 76% of organizations have no common view of assets and applications across security and IT, and 82% of employers report a lack of cybersecurity skills. So we can really see that deficit when it comes to resources and context in the cybersecurity sphere. Furthermore, we see 56% of organizations having things slip through the cracks because emails and spreadsheets are used to manage response processes. So those manual processes causing a large number of slip-ups, as well as 62% of breached organizations were unaware that their organizations were vulnerable to a data breach in the first place. We know that teams are already stretched thin, so tools that make us smarter and faster and more efficient when it comes to security and IT are not just novel, but necessary for success. And while spreadsheets can be good for things like weekly meetings, they are just not enough and don't move fast enough to keep up with threats that move at machine speed. So when we look at the threat landscape, we can see a number of concerning aspects or concerning numbers or figures. Starting off, we see 73 days being the average time to contain a breach, and a 667% increase in phishing emails since March to April of 2020. Furthermore, we see $3.92 million being the average cost of a breach, and 78% of cyber espionage incidents include phishing. So just some figures that really show some of the massive issues, the massive concerns related to having an insufficient cybersecurity environment, insufficient security hygiene when it comes to businesses. And overall, we see a $6 trillion in constantly increasing global cost of cybercrime for 2021. We see information in the news daily about cyber attacks and organizations being breached. And while they vary depending on the incident, these are often generally revolving around these common issues and these common problems in cybersecurity. Starting with the workflows and case management processes that you already have and digitizing those and automating your most common security use cases is going to be one of the ways that we implement SOAR within your business. And so why do we want to automate this connection between security and IT? With ServiceNow Security Incident Response Solution, security analysts in IT are able to combine their forces to respond smarter and faster. So when we work from this collaborative platform, teams can easily hand off tasks while they still maintain that visibility into their goal at hand. So making sure to route tasks or activities based on skills and assigning tasks to the correct responders is a really great way to increase efficiency. And security and IT collaboration is critical for success, and automating with SOAR capabilities enables the team to constantly stay ahead of threats. So how important is automation and collaboration between security and IT teams? Well, we see $2.5 million being the average cost of breach savings by companies with fully deployed automated security solutions. So we can see the massive amount of money that can be saved and protected by having these solid security automation practices in place. And ultimately, that comes from driving cyber resilience and having these operational efficiencies. So covering some of the security incident response goals that we have, one of those is going to be knowing when threats change and when new threats occur. And this comes from continuously monitoring security incidents across your enterprise at scale and having visibility into your threat exposure, identifying security changes in real time, and accurately assessing business impact so that you know what to prioritize and how to respond. But this can be a lot of work, and it sounds like a lot of work for teams to handle. That's why automation is so important. And when customers do implement it, we see them reporting dramatic reductions in investigation and incident triage times. Furthermore, another goal is knowing which incidents are critical and how to prioritize different incidents as they come in. And quickly prioritizing incidents relies on business context and severity insights so that we can quickly prioritize things. Ultimately, the single integrated platform that Now Security Incident Response delivers enables your team to quickly correlate security events, identify dependencies across systems, and orchestrate tasks and automate system interactions across the enterprise to prioritize and align responses before your business is impacted. ServiceNow Security Incident Response support for MITRE ATT&CK framework is a knowledge base of cyber attack tactics and techniques that is used as a foundation for the development of specific threat models and methodologies that deliver superpowers for security analysts. And this is how we can stay one step ahead of attackers by utilizing integrations like MITRE ATT&CK with our security incident response. Given that security teams are struggling to understand their adversary's intent when dealing with security incidents, and they may incorrectly prioritize security incidents without this insight, we have this new capability to allow incidents to be mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework so that we can provide advanced context on attacks to enable analysts to stay ahead of attackers and reduce the overall attack surface. Once a security incident is mapped to a MITRE tactic or technique, security analysts are then able to use the ServiceNow Attack Navigator to visualize how an individual tactic or technique is used by the numerous adversaries tracked by MITRE. Security analysts will then have an adversary perspective and a roadmap for investigations and resolutions. Furthermore, when the average enterprise uses 75 security tools in their SOC, it's hard to see the big picture. The security incident record puts everything into one place, from related tasks to notes to attachments. Because this single system of record is also shared with IT, it's really easy to collaborate and create tasks for them as well. But it's important to know that security incident response is a scoped application, so it is going to require those separate permissions. But this does allow the single system of record to communicate together, depending on how you want it, and just really enables that repeatable and collaborative workflows. Furthermore, another big goal is to respond faster with collaboration across teams. So this comes from automating and orchestrating processes and assigning the right owners. So we're able to route work seamlessly between security and IT teams to reduce cumbersome processes and manual handoffs during response and remediation. So this allows us to increase performance and productivity through consistent and cross-functional automation. And we do this by enabling things like dynamic dashboards to enable teams to easily communicate and collaborate on response tasks, and allowing to have things like reminders for assignees if their tasks aren't completed on time to meet SLA thresholds, as well as escalating tasks if it's necessary. And security analysts can also communicate with stakeholders from within the Now platform via things like Connect Chat to keep everyone in the loop. So how exactly does security incident response work? So we have several categories for security devices. We have our detection software. So these are going to be, of course, the pieces of software that are going to detect security incidents, security vulnerabilities. And then we have our vulnerability scanners. And these have the function of scanning the organization's environment to detect vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. Then we have our correlation software. This is just a fancy way of saying security incident event managers or security information and event management software, which is basically how you're receiving the events from several detection and vulnerability scanners. On top of these devices, we also have things like threat intelligence software that are there to support our findings and give us more information about the events that we ingest. So events and alerts are going to be flowing into ServiceNow along with any user submissions through third-party integrations with the service catalog. And these events are then going to be matched to your CMDB if you have one. And if you don't have a CMDB, we can still match these events and map them across our own implementation rules. So based on the kind of event we receive, the system will automatically kick in the appropriate workflow. And these workflows do have to be configured into the environment. So for example, a workflow for phishing or a workflow for malware, et cetera, et cetera. Along that process, if there are steps that should be automated, the system will automatically do so. So things like blocking or quarantining something if necessary. So just looking at this in more detail, we're going to see some names that may be familiar to you. So within the detection category, some of the things that we integrate with Palo Alto, Symantec, then with correlation, things like Splunk, and for vulnerability and configuration, Rapid7, Tenable. And then we can see also threat intel with things like recorded future and exploits and solution intel, as well as our orchestration software. So things like CrowdStrike. And all of these are going to be pulled in and integrated into ServiceNow, used with ServiceNow. So let's say you already have one of these in place, you can use integrations in order to keep what you have and just bring it into ServiceNow, bring it into that environment, and use that data to help with your security incident response process. So how does automated security incident response work? Well, we're going to walk through successful implementation. As I mentioned in the previous slides, once we integrate with these third-party security devices, an alert is going to be recognized from one of these devices or multiple ones at the same time. The system is then going to be able to deduplicate that event record and then prioritize the event, whether that was through your CMDB or through manual rules we have in place, like the location of that incident, or maybe even the computer owner if we want to have a rule for people like our C-level executives. The system would also be able to pull in some data that matches the threat we have identified and give us data that we can help in making future response action. And that's going to take us to the next part. And again, depending on specific rules we have in the system, we can determine appropriate responses. So that response can be maybe manually done. That response can be either manually done or automatically orchestrated. We then finally move on to the remediation step. And the beauty in all of this is that the post-incident reviews are automatically generated. So this allows us to maybe use that data for an audit record or as a lesson learned exercise for the future. So we can just see here how through each step, we're able to pull in some of those integrations and go through the various steps. And here's just a visualization of manual processes that we often see. And as you can see, all the boxes highlighted in green represent the automated steps in security incident response with ServiceNow. And the purple, or as you can see, all the boxes highlighted in green represent the automated steps in security incident response. And those dark blue, as you can see, here's just a visualization of the manual processes that we often see. So the boxes that are green are going to be the automated steps in security incident response with ServiceNow, and the blue boxes, the light blue boxes, are going to represent manual steps. So we can see how by utilizing manual processes like you may be doing now, a resolution that can usually take an hour or two is stretched over the period of days, if not even weeks. And now a much prettier picture showing us how after we implement ServiceNow security incident response automation, we're able to turn the response process from mostly manual to completely automated. And we can see all of these green boxes flowing quickly, flowing efficiently, and reducing that time to mere hours to respond. Now, I do want to touch on some security and I do want to touch now I do want to touch on some security incident response best practices, starting with the security incident response accelerator. So the first step into getting your security incident response up and running within your own environment is installing the right integrations for the security devices that may already exist in your organization's environment. The installation to each security device might be a little bit different depending. So getting these devices prioritized is going to be a best practice. And you can see below the link to the ServiceNow store, and as well as custom built integrations and how you can leverage a pre-built partner integration. Next is understanding your current architecture. In order to automate a process, we need to understand how that process is currently going. So this is going to allow us to build the desired workflow and the appropriate runbook and playbooks that are going to be leveraged through security incident response. This considers things like prioritization of your organization's services and assets, as well as current policies and SLAs, as well as workflows and playbooks that come out of the box with any ServiceNow security operations license. We often see people as well building their own playbooks custom to their specific business needs, and those being very useful, very heavily utilized. Finally, understanding your assets. So making sure that you're able to prioritize your effort and your task assignments. And we can achieve this by leveraging your pre-populated CMDB or leveraging third-party asset applications, so things like Microsoft SCCM, and leveraging ServiceNow's discovery system, as well as manual prioritization rules being relayed. I'd now like to jump into our security incident response lab. So starting off, we want to start by impersonating a role just to get an idea of how that specific role would view the security incident response solution in the environment. So we want to start by impersonating in the top right here with our user profile. Uh, we're going to impersonate Andrew. And this is going to kind of be our view of how someone like a CISO would view the security environment from their perspective or from things that they personally would be focused on tracking. And that's where we're going to go to our favorites and go and look at our CISO dashboard. So for somebody like Andrew, somebody like a CISO, we're going to have a really useful overview here. And this is just going to give us a number of metrics to drill down into if we want So we can see things like our policy compliance tracked, our configuration compliance, average time to close when it comes to vulnerabilities, and security incident responses, average time to respond, and things like our risk overview across our environment. So really just all of these metrics that we could drill down more into if we wanted to give us an overview of our environment and how it's currently performing. The other tab I want to touch on here is the incident handling tab. So here we're going to see some metrics like our security incident backlog growth, our P1 versus P2 incident count, and things like new versus closed security incidents. And for both of these, we are going to have those drill down capabilities. So if we wanted to go in and look at these in more detail, we could. And once we drill down into, for example, here, security incident backlog, we are going to be able to look at how this has been trending over time. And up here, a little bit more detailed summary. And we can even kind of customize this view. We could see all the options, all the tools we have up here if we want to do that as well. But we're going to jump back out. And from here, we're actually going to swap to another perspective. So from here, we're actually going to take a look at another performance analytics-based dashboard. And this is going to have a little bit of a different level of detail, maybe suited towards somebody such as a security manager or an SOC manager, or maybe a lead security analyst. So from the upper left of our screen, we're going to click on the My CISO dashboard arrow drop down. And from here, we're going to have a couple other dashboards available to us to visit, or we can search up in the top and typing in security. We're going to have the option to go to a couple security related dashboards. In this case, we're going to look at the Security Incident Explorer dashboard. So clicking on that, it's going to load up that dashboard for us. The Security Incident Explorer dashboard is going to be displayed, and here you're going to have the ability to perform some actions such as filtering incidents into your environment based on things like priority and their business impact. And we can see here we have those security incident closures by priority, as well as the security incidents, total security incidents listed on the side. And then we have security incident assigned heat maps here, so we can really see where these security incidents are going, what categories they fall under, and things like that, and also how they're prioritized. So next, I'm going to be impersonating Adam. This is going to be our security analyst persona, and we're going to see from a security analyst perspective what they're able to do, the tools they have at their disposal with the SecOps platform. And so from Adam's perspective, we are going to go ahead and from the filter navigator, go under our favorites. And we can see here in security incidents, we're going to open up our security workbench. And with our security incident workspace, we're actually going to be able to see a big list of all of our current incidents. So we can see up at the top as well in our quick filters, we're able to filter this down to make it a little more digestible. So in this case, we're going to categorize or filter out our incidents by our current open incidents with the category of phishing. So by clicking on that, we're going to be able to get a more specific list of our incidents revolving around phishing. And by clicking into one specifically, here we're going to go into this phishing report. We're going to be given a lot of information surrounding this incident, this phishing report. We can see some details, and we can see also on the side, I do want to draw attention to our playbook. So here, depending on your specific needs, you can customize playbooks to respond to particular incidents. So let's say that we found that we were actually getting a lot of phishing incidents coming through. If we wanted to, we could actually build a playbook so that we have a more reliable kind of framework to respond to these phishing incidents in, because oftentimes you find yourselves doing the same actions, going through the same things. So our playbook will allow us to automate some of those more common incident response actions and create a playbook around that to make those easier for analysts. But for now, we're going to take a look at our overview and just go through some of that information, take note, and kind of see the details surrounding this current incident. And we can even go into the playbook. And for now, we're going to click on our first task, which is the analysis phase, where we're going to acknowledge the user submission and ask if they interacted with the email. We see that somebody in the organization has reported this phishing email. We want to make sure that they didn't actually click on any of the likely malicious links that were included in this email. And by doing compose email, by clicking compose email, we're able to go ahead and draft an email to this person just to check in on that and ensure that, and we can have templates for that as well, so we don't have to draft a new email every time. And once we've done that, we can click on Start Task to continue with the steps. So we're going to drop back out. And going through here, we can see some other information in the Explore tab. So by clicking down on observables and looking into our observables, we can actually see a couple of things. Here it's identified 2 observables, and the one up here, the totally legit website, malicious website, has been identified. And so we want to go ahead and confirm that there was a URL found in the email, and we can confirm that this URL is malicious as it's been identified by one of the threat lookups that were automatically conducted. And we can dig into this further by reviewing the automated threat lookup results within the same Explore tab. So right below observables, we can do threat lookup results, and we see that this has been identified a number of times. And the integration vendor or threat lookup solution / service that the observable was run against, along with the corresponding finding and result value, confirms that there are malicious threat indicators in the reported phishing email. So navigating back to the playbook task, and as you're going through the analysis process, you might run into a step like, are there related incidents for the threat? And this information can be found in several places on the incident record. We can also initiate an inquiry that searches all of the emails within our environment with the option of performing actions on them. So if we go to our Explore tab under Investigation, and then search email and observables, we're actually able to go ahead and use this in order to look up particular emails and figure out what we want to do with them, or take action on what we want to do with them, whether it's deleting them to make sure that they are removed from inboxes. And through our containment step, we might need to perform some sort of orchestration with a third-party integration we have. So for example, if we wanted to block all requests from a certain IP, this can be achieved via navigating through the Explore tab. So going down here and going into our observables. And going back to that malicious website, we're able to go and click on the checkbox to the left. And by highlighting or selecting this, on the drop-down list, we can choose what we want to do. In this case, we could allow block request, or we could delete it. We are going to block this request, and then we could go ahead and click Run to start orchestrating that response. Next, it's going to pop up these implementation options. And by clicking the lookup using list icon, the magnifying glass on the right, we're able to go and search what we want to use to block this. In this case, we have the Palo Alto Networks firewall, and we're going to choose the global URL block list option. And then we're going to go ahead and submit that to use this particular tool as our block list. Also, we do always have the option to add new observables if we want to, if we run into something as we're going through the process. And this could affect the risk score of the incidents and prioritization. So in our Explore tab, once again, we're going to go and expand configuration items down here. And under More, we have a couple options, and we're going to go look into our configuration items. And from here, we can click Edit Configuration Items, and it's going to pop up an edit record. And by searching for a particular configuration item, we can add that to the list. So let's just add this, for example, and then clicking the arrow, we can add it into our list and save it. So this is an example of if we needed to isolate a compromised asset. So in this case, the one we've chosen here, now next, we're going to click the checkbox next to what we've just added in here. And in the Isolate Host dropdown, we can see our options here for what we'd want to do in this situation. But here, we do want to isolate the host. And so once we hit run, we're once again going to get an implementation option. We're going to get an implementation option. And here, we're going to use endpoint protection. And from there, we're going to be able to isolate our host. Navigating back up to the top, we're going to want to go ahead and go to our Close Incident tab. So returning to the incident record and going to our Closure Information tab, we could go ahead and fill out our close code, close notes, and if we wanted, we could check the box to create a knowledge article. And this is going to allow us to leverage that knowledge article for future things like creating a new or updated playbook or creating a lesson learned exercise, for example. And then we could go ahead and close the incident from here. And that is going to conclude the lab. I'm going to jump back to our presentation for a quick wrap up. So just as a wrap up, in our lab, we were able to go over some of the highlights of different tasks that an analyst might have to go through. We saw how the analyst could perform some solution steps like blocking a domain on the firewall, adding a compromised asset to the incident record, isolating the host, and creating a new playbook potentially with the information that we gathered. Also, if you do want access to any of the resources today that we went over, simply reach out to your ServiceNow account team. So what are some next steps? Well, it starts with manual operations being moved. So using spreadsheets for tracking or having no centralized system for security responses can leave teams struggling and crossing their fingers and hoping for the best when a problem does come up. So we want to move that into our step 1, which is basic operations like automated incident creation, automated prioritization, or improved visibility, for example, such as with the dashboards that we looked at. From there, we would move on to things like automated investigations, threat intelligence correlation, workflow-driven consistent processes, or accelerated responses. And then finally, our step 3 would be to have the full remediation process orchestrated, automated, having playbooks to respond to certain critical scenarios, automated incident response, and integrating easily with new tools through the new Now platform. And finally, here are just some additional resources, documentation, training videos, for example, for you to utilize surrounding SecOps. Thank you so much for joining us in our SecOps overview /how-to. I hope you have a great day.